Tower of Despair Part 2. The two things I recommend. If you haven't seen Part 1, I recommend to watch it. But, if you do not want to get spoiled at all, then avoid the video until you get to the end of the post-game. It's difficult, but it's really cool. But nonetheless, you have been warned. Next up in the line is the Gourmet Burger boss fight. Well, if you remember the first part, the boss fights were alright. Maybe not that bad, you know? Some of them were pretty fun, and some ended up being ironic, like that Colossal Serpent boss fight. For my case. But this is the part where the boss fights get to be a little bit more annoying, per se. The Gourmet Burger is obviously based off the Burger enemy type, that it devours your meat for one a turn instead of attacking, and this basically makes the meat don't have any other use in battle. You can definitely see why it's gonna be really difficult. I was a little bit worried that if one me gets knocked out, that it would be game over, so like, you failed. So I didn't want to risk anything of losing the challenge. So yeah. This is actually where I actually had to use HP sprinkles for an obvious reason of not, losing. But yeah, you can definitely see, because how Gourmet Burgers constantly would probably eat all of your meats except one per turn, it makes it pretty difficult. At the very least, the good news is, basically, once you at least defeat one Gourmet Burger, or at least more accurate, it's not that difficult. Like, personally, 4 was not really exactly needed. At least 3 would have been more than enough, in my opinion, because a 4th one is just there at least to do 1 damage, I guess, but if the case is interesting, that, again, for example, when Melissa does burial, it's usually in the start of a turn, but for that case, it wasn't. But nonetheless, I didn't mention that the background for these boss fights is actually really cool. Yeah, this new towel background for Tower of Despair is specifically pretty cool in this case. I mean, the good news is, if a Gourmet Burger does swallow a meat temporarily, at least you don't get any damage. But still something that I would try to avoid within the battle. I don't know, would the Gourmet Burger still try to eat a meat if I did not use the safe spot? You know, that could be a possibility. Nonetheless, though, it's still a decent boss fight. This is where the boss fights get more annoying, but it's nothing that's too bad for this case. I mean, still, that means you can't it's more like 1 me versus these bosses instead of your average 4-part TV, but it's alright. But yeah, it will just can kind of explain the Burgle boss fight. It's more of just a test of your patience compared to the others. But don't worry, once this is taken care of, well, things can't go that bad. But nonetheless, it's still pretty decent. You know, the team's it's not the craziest, just to mention though, okay. Of course, Roar and Mage are really good, respectively, you know. Especially, I have to say, Roar got a decent buff with a horse if you're doing it as a player. Stuff's pretty good, you know. It's a healer class, you know. And it also has good defense. Wario has the revive without using any MP. I mean, it's only a chance, but, you know. And it's really good for getting MP gain, and also to get the chance of getting Hyper Sprinkle for free, basically, and also low defense, which is really good. But yeah, that's when one Gourmet Burger is defeated. All of them are the same level, so there's none that are stronger, per se. But yeah. You know it's so ironic, though? I just want to get this out of the way. It's so ironic that back then, it's like, this is how we did, like, King DDD or Mario, for example. But now we'll finally have to make the Mii's so much more accurate nowadays. And that's really the cool part about Miitopia Switch. Like, again, I'm surprised that they found a way to make Miitopia, which is already a pretty amazing game, and they managed to find a way to make the game even better. It's still amazing that it just manages to pull off that technique. And with that, that's the Gourmet Burgers defeated. But could this get much worse? Oh yes, it's a lot worse! Meet the infamous nightmare known as Red Fiend. I mean, if you'd seen the memes about how deadly terror fiends are, or fiends in general, so we got the unfortunate case of having a boss as a terror fiend. Oh yeah, also you have reskinned ice creams, basically. This is where it gets terrifying. This boss fight basically decides of who wins and who loses. Like, personally, this decides if you're gonna live this boss fight or you lose. My goal is defeat the Red Fiend as soon as possible, because the only good news it's slower than Terror Fiend, but since it's basically a boss of the Fiend Enemy, it's terrifying. The only good news I have to say is that Red Fiend's the only boss that's not exactly a super boss per se. So, if you have like a one-shot weapon like Righteous Angle or Monster Dinner, you could stop Red Fiend before the damage really hits in. But nonetheless, if you could at least beat Red Fiend, the boss fight gets much easier. Because it's just two hard mode ice creams, which are around the same difficulty as Dark Queen from the District 6 and Tower of Dread. But again, it's the Red Thing And the red thing is the one that's really painful. Again, the new ice cream-like enemies, yeah, they're not that bad. They're difficult, but they're not gonna be the nightmares. You just need to take out that red fiend first. Because if you don't, it's basically game over. But yeah, this was the boss fight that decides if you're gonna beat it or not, basically. Unfortunately, I beat it. Once that's done, then it's alright, okay? It's just difficult it's mainly difficult because of the, oh no, Red Fiend, a boss type of that infamous enemy that people meme about that could one-shot you. At least it's slow, which is good, but still. As you saw, that's what I mean back in part 1, that, yeah. Nonetheless, things get pretty intense, but not that bad. So yeah. It gets alright. You know, I could do high damage like that. But yeah, just to confirm though, you can only go beyond damage of 999 if you get Horse Whispering activated. Also, when it gets the villainous status effect, it's simple to say, but just get the Miis to go to Western Stage in the safe spot, because, you know, you don't want to activate the dislike like Miito. Also, Praise is also basically the equivalent of an instant revive for Royal, which is nice. And if you get stuff like this, boom, you basically get full heal without having to worry too much about a heal. That's why not maxing out the bond can sometimes be useful for certain reasons. But yeah, at this point, it's basically just the ice cream fight, or the dark green fight from the end of 3DS Miitopia. Just only 2 of them. Again, it's the red thing that's the terrifying part. The ice creams aren't that bad. I mean, they do have a bit of high damage with their all-grouped ice attack. But, apart from that, not too much. It's challenging enough, but don't expect it to be, again. So yeah, don't worry about this happening again. This is mainly there to decide for the final few challenges for the end of the tower. It works well enough. So yeah, once you beat this one, that's the end of the fight. It's a heal, but there's still a couple more things to go through. But more specifically, there's 2 more boss challenges left before we finally take on through and complete the tower. Nonetheless, you obviously now see that things are getting a bit to be heated up a bit more. And what else, and what other kind of challenges will I have to face off? Well, don't worry. I'll try at least get to the final 2 boss fights of the Tower of Despair as soon as I can. Because these next 2 are actually really cool, and I can definitely see them being the best post-game bosses, just like Dark Sun 3DS. Like, they're just as great as Dark Sun from 3DS. If you want to know, though, I still prefer Dark Sun, but that's only because of, I played the original. These are available for more of a challenge, per se, which they do provide more of a challenge since, again, you don't get to fight these in any districts or anything. You just have to go through so, like, you could just go blind and not know. But anyways, I'll see you next time for part 3.